The Stars That Guide You Home. Written by Jemma Robinson. Read by Johnny Peyton Hill. The rolling green hills and the smell of pine trees are a familiar, homely sight and scent after so many years away. To be summoned back to the capital by King Edmund was unusual, but most welcome. It feels good to be home. The last time I saw Edmund was before he gained his kingship and was a mere boy of 16. His father, King Alfred, wanted me to teach him about the world in order to prepare him for the life he was destined to lead. Though a medical doctor by trade, I had also worked as a private tutor for the families of lords and ladies, teaching their children the beliefs of the old gods and the sciences of the new world, as well as politics and languages. Edmund was a trying student at times, highly intelligent but unwilling to listen, instead choosing to believe in his ideas alone, stating on more than one occasion that, in the end, the people would take his word as gospel when he became king. Despite this, I was fond of him. Beneath the arrogance, he could be charming and polite. I knew that if he could channel those aspects of his personality and dispel what I hoped would be the arrogance of youth, he would grow to be a great king. The sound of the gates opening snaps me back from my thoughts, and as my carriage pulls closer to the long stretch of road leading to the palace, I take a moment to look properly at what is now Edmund's. And the difference is marked. Where King Alfred had maintained the traditional beauty of the building, Edmund had chosen to adorn the turrets with gilded statues of cherubs and eagles alongside draping banners of ruby and gold. Despite my reservations at this new feel to the palace, I am still looking forward to reacquainting with Edmund after all these years. My carriage slows to a stop, and the footman opens the door to bow as I step out, stretching my limbs, appreciating the feel of the ground beneath my feet as I walk over to the front doors.
My name is Dr. James Collins.
I introduce myself to the footman at the door as I open my bag to retrieve my letter of summon.
I am here at the request of King
James! Edmund's voice rings out, and as I look up, I see him striding over, resplendent in a red silk waistcoat and breeches, a gold chain finished with a ruby pendant resting against his chest. His dark hair falls loose from its ponytail in places, just like it always did when he was a boy. I extend a low bow as he reaches me.
Your Majesty.
I feel him grab my shoulders and raise me back up as I look him in the eyes. We have known each other long enough to bypass formality, James. He smiles. After all, I'm not sure I would be here without your integral support and guidance. Call me Edmund, please. I incline my head respectfully. Still smiling, he claps my shoulder. Would you care to join me for a drink? I smile gravely. It would be an honour and most welcome. It has been a long journey. He grins at me, then leads on past the footman and through the doors into the palace. Courtiers, maids and guards all stop and extend low bows or curtsies in his presence as he washes past them, up the staircases lined with carpets the colour of his favourite gemstone, towards the study that was once his father's. Alfred died 3 years ago. I still regret to this day that I was unable to attend his funeral. I was out of the country on a medical expedition with my university fellows. I only found out the news on my return 4 weeks after his passing. I counted him as one of my dearest friends, and not to be able to be present on his final journey out of this world is something that will live with me until the end of my own days. We reach the door and Edmund goes straight over to the drinks cabinet. As he pours 2 glasses of port wine from a crystal decanter, I take the time to look around the study which used to be his father's space. A lot remains the same. The same books on philosophy and ethics still stand on the large oak bookshelf, and the most comfortable ornate armchairs still take pride of place in front of the roaring fire, where Alfred and myself would often sit late into the night discussing a variety of matters. Newer additions which I have never seen before include various unrelated objects placed underneath crystal cloches.
A gold button, a silver ring set with an emerald and engraving which I cannot quite make out, a trio of bronze coins.
And most disturbingly, a dagger, blood-stained and muddied at the hilt. I see you are admiring my trophies. Edmund's voice takes me by surprise as I turn to see him standing behind me, brandishing 2 goblets full to the brim with ruby red port. I've been busy since I gained my kingship, James. I've won many battles to maintain the freedom of these lands and my rights as king. Some big, some small, but not insignificant. I like to take a little souvenir from each of my victories to remind myself of the glories and remind others that I am not a person to be taken lightly. He walks towards the cloche covering the dagger, placing a hand on top of it. My battle with the King of Filion. It went on for 4 long months, but I got his surrender in the end, taking his dagger, which had been his father's, for good measure.
And the ring?
I ask, clearing my throat. That one has the best story of all. He grins. But it will have to wait for another time, as I have some wonderful news to share with you, James. He gestures to the chairs, and I gratefully take a seat, appreciating the warmth and comfort. Carriage riding, though by no means a rough way to travel, can get uncomfortable by the 4th day of jolting along old stone roads and forest trails.
What is your news, then?
I inquire as I sip my port, admiring the depth of flavour with a satisfied sigh. He gives me a knowing grin. Well, he begins, placing his own goblet down on the table as he looks at me. This may come as a shock, James. At times I can hardly believe it myself. But I am a married man. I look at him, trying to figure out if he is being serious. Surely if he were married, I would have heard something. We had to keep the wedding as quiet as possible, he explains, sensing my confusion. Sophia had found herself in a spot of trouble. We didn't want to draw attention to the fact that she was back here in the capital.
Sophia?
I look at him in astonishment.
As in Sophia Reynolds?
He nods, and I shake my head.
I heard she left the capital years ago. No one had seen or heard from her.
She did, he nods. As I said, she had managed to get herself into some trouble. She had found herself living with a man who was cruel to her. He was a drunk. A violent drunk who hurt her quite badly, James. Of course, as soon as I heard all of this, I made arrangements to take her out of that horrific situation and bring her back here. Then, one thing led to another. Old feelings reappeared and... He's smiling widely, and I hold out my hand to shake his in congratulations. But a niggling part of me can't help but wonder about the unlikeliness of the situation. From my distant memories of Sophia, she never wanted anything to do with Edmund. Her disappearance from the capital was thought of by most people as a desperate attempt to escape an arranged marriage, which she wanted nothing to do with. Still, I smile back at him, clapping him on the shoulder.
Where is she, then?
I would very much like to meet her. Edmund frowns. I must admit, James, that's partly the reason for my asking you here. He smiles ruefully. I apologise if you feel I have asked you here under false pretences.
She's ill?
I inquire carefully, and once again he gives me a puzzled frown, shaking his head. No, not ill in the traditional sense, he begins before breaking off. He takes a deep breath before continuing. It is an affliction of the mind. I see. I nod thoughtfully.
She will not leave her chamber. She hardly eats and barely says 2 words, even to me.
He sits down heavily in his chair. I remain standing, watching him closely.
When did this start?
Not long after we were married, which is now a month ago. Everything was wonderful, and then suddenly it was like she turned into this different person. You said that she had suffered quite badly due to this other man, I say thoughtfully. It is possible that old memories are returning and causing her to retreat into herself because she is frightened of what she went through. Would you attend on her? He says. He looks tired, his face anguished. To see what you think, to see if you can help her? You are aware that afflictions of the mind are not my specialism, Edmund. I'm not sure how much use I will be. I trust you, James, he says seriously. I trust you and your opinion. Please. Looking at him again, I smile and nod. If it is what you wish, then I will be glad to. I shall attend on her tomorrow morning and do my best to help her. He smiles gratefully, lifting his glass to clink against mine. I was now aware of the reason behind being summoned to the palace. It would appear there was lost time which Edmund and I had to catch up on, and so we stayed up late into the night, talking and exchanging stories until the fire burnt away into the embers. The next morning, I knock lightly at the door to Sophia's chamber, and after a few moments it is opened by a young girl, who I assume is her lady-in-waiting. She curtsies, and I bow respectfully. My name is James Collins. I introduce myself with a smile. I'm a doctor. King Edmund has requested that I call on Lady Sophia as she has been unwell. She nods. Lady Sophia is in bed, she replies. Please, follow me, sir. If she is sleeping, I can come back a little later on. I don't wish to disturb her. She ain't sleeping, sir. She shakes her head, her accent betraying her working-class roots. She don't sleep. She continues into the chamber, and I follow, slightly perturbed by her comment. The room is peaceful and minimally decorated, in stark contrast to the rest of the palace. Old oak furnishings are all that adorn the plain white room, and as I enter the bedchamber, I see that it is equally simple, including the four-poster bed upon which I see Sophia laying. I barely recognise her as the girl I had seen around the village many years before. That girl glowed with carefree happiness and joy. The young woman I see before me looks as though such joy has been long gone from her life. Her face is as pale as the bed linen she rests atop. Her red hair fans it like flames of a fire, the only piece of colour in the room. Her green eyes are red-rimmed and wet with tears. As I reach her bedside, I bow respectfully before speaking. Lady Sophia, my name is James Collins. I'm a doctor. King Edmund has advised me that you are feeling unwell, and he wishes me to look in on you to see if there's anything I can do to help. I see the girl who showed me to the bedchamber waiting respectfully at the door, and I realise I haven't yet asked her to leave us. Miss, would you mind leaving us for a few moments so that I can assess Lady Sophia's condition? She looks at me, and then at Sophia, who silently shakes her head, her eyes fearful. Of course, I say gently. If Lady Sophia wishes you to stay, then I have no objection. I see her glance at Sophia, who nods her head lightly. With a curtsy, the girl makes her way over to the bedside and takes a seat beside it. I beg your pardon, miss, I have not asked your name. She offers me a small smile. It's Annalise, sir. And you are Lady Sophia's lady-in-waiting, yes? Annalise nods. I turn to look at Sophia, but she gives no reaction that she is even listening to what we are saying. Medically, aside from the fact that she appears distant and visibly upset, the only thing which concerns me greatly is her right arm, which is both bruised and covered in painful-looking raised blisters. May I take a look at your arm, my lady? She doesn't respond, so I reach out my hands to take her arm and take it as a good sign that she's all right with it when she doesn't pull away. As I turn it as gently as I can, I hear her wince in discomfort. How did this happen? She remains silent. I once again turn to Annalise to see if she can give me some answers. It was like that when she arrived, sir, she answers quietly. I've been bathing it in lavender water, but it don't seem to be making much difference. I smile kindly. The blisters need to be drained first. Then a poultice of lavender and comfrey can be used to help with the infection and to calm the skin. I shall prepare one now and show you how to use it if you would like. Annalise has followed me, and as I begin to work, I speak with her again. So, you have no idea how Lady Sophia gained the injuries to her arm? I ask gently as I hand her lavender to begin taking buds from the stalks. They are quite specific injuries and only present in one place. She looks worried. I stop what I'm doing and turn to her. You need not be afraid, child. Anything you say in this room will not leave it. I took an oath as a physician to keep the confidentiality of my patients and of those who also take care of them. I pause before continuing carefully. I know about Lady Sophia's background. I know that she was living in a horrible situation before she came here. I just want to know if this was done to her by the man she was living with then. Tom. Sophia's voice is so quiet I can barely hear it. As Annalise and I turn back towards the bed, I see she's tossing and turning in the bed, repeating the name over and over. Does this happen often? I ask Annalise as we make our way back over to the bed. She nods. I place a gentle hand to Sophia's shoulder. My lady,
I say quietly as she comes around. My lady, it's okay. You are safe. It is just a bad dream. You are safe here. There are tears in her eyes as she looks at me fearfully. I'm not safe. Not with him. Not here. I look at her sadly, wondering what on earth could have happened to make her this fearful. With a gentle voice, I try once more. You are at the palace, my lady. You are no longer in any danger, I promise you that. Tom. She says the name again, the tears flooding down her face, Annalise looking at her in concern. She squeezes her arm gently before looking over at me. Would you give us a moment, Doctor? I'm surprised by the request, but I can see that Sophia trusts Annalise, and maybe the young girl can get her to open up a little somehow. Getting to my feet, I incline my head in agreement, advising her that I would be right outside when they were ready. I go and stand outside the door, and I cannot stop thinking about the marked difference in the girl I remember so vividly in her childhood. Whatever is wrong with her, whatever has happened, it is likely that I will need some help from a colleague or peer to get her on the road to recovery. I'm just relieved that Edmund got her to safety when he did. I hear the click of the door handle behind me and turn to find Annalise standing there. I think she's ready to talk, sir, she says, and I follow her back into Sophia's chamber, where I see she is now sat up, her head propped up with pillows, her hands twisting at the bedsheets as she looks across at us. She looks first at Annalise, who seems to nod in encouragement, and then to me. Annalise says, as a doctor, you swore an oath. Her voice is soft and gentle, still tinged with her earlier tears. I nod as I walk over to the bed and take a seat. Yes, my lady, I reply gently. I swore an oath which honours me to keep the confidentiality of my patients and anything that they say. Whatever you wish to tell me will not leave this room, I can assure you of that. She's still looking at me as if she is unsure. Annalise walks up to the other side of the bed and takes hold of her hand. I see her squeeze it gently, and Sophia looks at me once more. The king, she begins, before shaking her head, looking down at her hands. Nothing can happen to you in this room, Lady Sophia, I say, trying to encourage her. All I wish to do is to help you. The king is not my husband, she says it suddenly, the words exploding from her like she's wanted to say something for so long. I look at her in bafflement. I do not understand, my lady. She is looking at me, her green eyes full of pain and fear and confusion. He brought me here against my will. He forced me to marry him. But I cannot be married to him, for I am already wed. I look across from her to Annalise, who seemed as shocked as me at what she is hearing. I look back at Sophia, carefully. You are already married? I ask cautiously. King Edmund says that you are living with a man. Tom, she says achingly. Tom Thornton. We married a year ago. Then one day, when he was out at work, the king's men came and kidnapped me. They brought me here, and I was forced to marry the king. I didn't want to. I told him I couldn't and wouldn't, as I was already married, but he forced me. She thrusts her injured arm towards me, her eyes blinded with tears. They held a burning candle to my arm until I said the vows. I didn't want to, but it hurt too much. I couldn't bear it. She buries her head in her hands as she sobs. I look at her arm, the red, raw blisters covering one side, and could see it could have come from where she said. Yet she is clearly sleep-deprived and hysterical, so maybe she just doesn't know what is real and what is not. The king said that this man was cruel to you. No, she shakes her head strongly, cutting me off. No, not Tom. He would never lay a finger on me. It is all lies. Lies to keep me here. Edmund doesn't love me. He just wants me. I'm just a trophy to him, something for him to keep to show that he has won. She looks at me tearfully. Tom won't know. He won't understand. When he got back from the woodlands, I would have just disappeared without a trace. He will be heartbroken. I need to get back to him. You have to help me, please. She grasps for my hands, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. My head is spinning. It is all too much to take in. You don't believe me, she whispers. dropping my hands. I told you all of this, and you think I am lying? No, my lady, not lying, I say, softly looking at her as I get up from my seat. I just think that you are tired and unwell, and that you need to rest. I shall prepare a sleeping draught to help you. My wedding ring, she cries out, stopping me in my tracks. He took my wedding ring from me when he forced me to marry him. He will have kept it, I'm sure of it. Another trophy to prove that I am now his. A silver band studded with an emerald with our initials engraved on either side. T and S. If you find it, you will see. You will believe me. My blood runs cold as I look at her. She must see the look on my face as her expression changes from anguish to hope. You've seen it, she whispers softly, a sob escaping her lips. Then you must see that I am telling the truth. Please. The ring in Edmund's study. The one he wouldn't tell me the story about, yet I recall the smile playing on his lips when I asked him. I go over to the table and grab the sleeping draught from my bag before making my way over to her again. Please, she begins again, but I hold up a gentle hand to stop her. I believe you, I say calmly, watching the relief spread across her face. But I need to understand more. You are too tired and distressed to tell me properly, so please take this draught and get some sleep. I shall call on you again in the morning. You can't tell him any of this, she says tearfully, grabbing hold of my hand once again. The king, he cannot know that you know. I shake my head. Your secret will not leave this room, Lady Sophia. I promise you. I look her in the eyes, making sure she knows she can trust me as I hand her the bottle. She drinks it, the effect instantaneous as her eyes flicker shut, and she falls into her first proper sleep in what I can only assume a very long time.